let's say today we're going to Galveston. I'm going to press direct, and then I'm going to type in over here. It's already K, right? So I'm going to press, go to the next letter, G, and I could use this, right, to flip and flop between letters, but it's easier for me to just type it since we're on the ground, not bump it around. Okay. And then it's intuitive. It actually knows KGLS is there, and I can say direct down here. You can see it gives me an arrow. It says destination waypoint, and then it puts a line over here, and you can see if I zoom in here real close, you can see it's not taking me from Wolf, it's taking me from my current GPS coordinates to the airport. Now, if I go into flight plan, you can see it's just a straight arrow to GLS. And then, because GLS was the last airport I looked at, if I ask for info, GLS shows up, and I can go to COM, and I can go, here's the weather there, I can press Tune COM, and now it'll show up over here. It also, just for your information, shows up top here and actually gets identified. So if you look closely up here, you can see it says GLS ASOS. So it knows that that's the reference. So now there's a couple other things you can do with the direct button. So anytime you clicked on any airport, you can press direct. So let's say I'm on my nearest list, any one of these airports, right? I can press direct. That's direct, go. If I'm with a flight plan and I have multiple points in the flight plan, right? I can select any one and press the direct button. So anything that's highlighted, you press the direct button, it's going to take you there. And even, you can go over here to this screen. Okay, so I've shown you kind of how to work the GPS in general. And now I'm going to show you a workflow that I think is the simplest possible way to use this thing. So let's say, for instance, we've already started up all that, and you've got to this point on your checklist. It says avionics and radios program. Okay, so I want to go to, let's say Galveston today. Okay, so I'm going to press direct. Okay, and I'm going to type in here, and I could use this little cursor, but I'm going to type it in because I'm on the ground. Okay. G, and it's already in there. I'm going to press the direct button. It says it's got an arrow to Galveston. So I've got my GPS program. Now I'm going to get my radio program. Well, what's the next radio? Well, Galveston has an ATIS, so I'm going to want to listen to that. So I'm going to go info, pulls up Galveston because that's the last airport. COM, ASOS, which is going to be the same as their ATIS in this case. I'm going to tune COM and make sure it comes over here. Good. Okay, what's my next frequency? What runway am I taking off? I think that wind is favoring runway 02 today. Okay, I could be wrong. We'll get up there and we'll look at the windsock, but I think that's what it is. My initial altitude is going to be 1,500. So my avionics are set for what I'm doing. Avionics and radios are set. I can check that off now. That's just the simplest way to do it. So up here, looks like I was wrong earlier. Winds are mostly calm, but if anything, they might be favoring runway 20 a little bit. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to reset this to runway 20. Okay. So you're at the end of the runway here. You're about to do your abort plan on your checklist. And so, you know, any issues on the runway, we'll take the runway. Any issues above the runway, we'll still take the runway. Otherwise, we'll use the field over there to the left. About 600 feet, we might consider a turn back around to the airport. It addition to the abort plan, I'm going to do a little takeoff briefing. So we're taking off on runway 20 here, and because that's what the wind is favoring. And we're going to climb up to 2,000 feet. So we're going to be climbing out like this, right? And then we're going to need to turn left to heading of, something about 120 or so after we take off, turn left. So we'll turn left, I don't know, 500 feet or so.
Okay, so here we're just climbing through 500 feet, and I'm going to turn left, just like I said earlier, to heading of 120 or so. Now, I went and twisted the heading bug here and then turned, but I could have just as easily turned the airplane there first and then press and held the heading bug knob, and the bug would have snapped to that heading. You can see here that I'm bringing the power back to about 5,000 RPM for the climb, and I'm pitching the nose down a little bit and trimming for about 85 knots or so. Now, if you're above 75, you can see up here it says AP for autopilot. If you're below 75, it will say SPD, noting that your speed is too low for it to be available. Okay, so now we're just leveling our wings, and we're still in the climb. We're on our heading. I'm going to go ahead and press my autopilot button. And what that's going to do is put the autopilot on and the flight director at the same time. We're in roll mode, you can see up there. We're in vertical speed, climbing 600 feet and then out. Now it's not going to hold a heading or anything, it's just going to try to keep the wings level. So I want to do better than that. I want to press the direct button, direct again, and that's going to take me to shoals, draw me a new line that I'm centered on, and then press the nav button, changes the mode to GPS, and now the autopilot is going to turn me on to my correct course. Now, it's climbing me too fast, so I'm going to press the down button a couple times because my speed is getting low. You can see I decreased it by 100 each time I pressed it to 300 feet per minute. My speed is creeping up again, and I'm much happier with that. Of course, the airplane is going to keep climbing at that 300 feet per minute till we get to our bugged altitude of 2,000 feet. Okay, now that we have all of our stuff configured, we're heading the right direction. I'll go ahead and switch it over to the weather at Galveston, and while I'm listening, I'm going to go ahead and throw the tower in to the standby. Coming down and just pressing tune comm, and of course Galveston was already in there because that's the next airport in our flight plan, and that's the last airport we looked up. And then of course once I'm done listening to the weather, all I got to do is press the flip-flop button and flip tower frequency over. Okay, so I've decided we're a little high here, so I'm going to turn down the altitude bug and then press the down button. It's going to default to 500, and I'm going to press up a couple times to bring it back to 300 because that's too much of a descent. But then of course the speed is going to go way up, so I need to pull the power back to something like 4,000 RPM or so. Otherwise you're going to get some error messages and your autopilot isn't going to like you. And I'm looking for that traffic, and looks like he'll be no factor. Now that's a real basic workflow on how to run the autopilot, but let's say the thing's not doing what you want it to. So you can always press the disconnect button down on your stick there. That'll disconnect the autopilot, like it says up there. Now see, it's yellow, so just the flight director is active, and you would have to manually fly the airplane to follow the wings if you wanted to fly that. But if you double tap that autopilot button, you can see that the flight director disappears entirely.